Snow whipped across the empty highway, a white fury devouring everything in sight. And through that storm ran a small shadow, a shepherd puppy collapsing and rising again, leaving a thin crimson trail where her paws met the frozen earth. She should have given up. Any reasonable creature would have. Officer Frank Brennan saw the dark shape flicker in his rearview mirror, still running, still chasing his patrol cruiser through the heart of the blizzard. He'd seen strays before. Nothing unusual. He kept driving, but the puppy stumbled again. Got up and kept running. Frank's foot hovered over the brake, his last shift before retirement, his last day wearing the badge. An empty house waited for him, each in a silence that had become unbearable. Something in that desperate little creature, the sheer refusal to quit, made him pull over. Leave, like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now, let's continue with the story. Frank Brennan was 58 years old, and every one of those years showed in the deep lines etched around his eyes. 28 years with the Millbrook Police Department, and in 48 hours he'd be done, retired, finished. But the thought brought no relief, only a hollow ache that had become his constant companion. His house sat on the edge of town, a 3-bedroom ranch that had once felt like home. Now it was just walls and silence. Kathy's craft room remained exactly as she'd left it 3 years ago. The door closed, a shrine to a woman who had begged him to notice she was dying. He'd told her it was stress. Take some Tylenol, honey. By the time they found the ovarian cancer, it was stage 4. 8 months later, she was gone. Frank blamed himself every single day. The medical bills from her treatment had crushed him. $89,000 in debt. His monthly pension would be $1,800. His expenses ran $119.50. He was drowning in slow motion, and nobody knew. Not his daughter Beth in Seattle, not his co-workers, not the town that respected Officer Brennan, the man who had served faithfully for nearly 3 decades. 3 weeks ago, he'd sat in this same patrol car, his service weapon pressed against his temple, finger on the trigger. Ready, done. Then his phone buzzed. A video call from his 4-year-old granddaughter. Lily, Grandpa, I drew you a Christmas tree. The gun went back in the glove compartment where it still waited. Beth rarely called anymore. 35. Brilliant, angry. She'd grown up resenting him for always choosing work over family. Now she had her own daughter, and barely let Frank into their lives. He saw Lily mostly through video calls. A grandfather in name only, watching his granddaughter grow up through a screen. The house smelled of freezer-burned dinners and dust. He hadn't cooked a real meal since Kathy died, hadn't touched her things, hadn't moved forward. He was existing, not living, counting down the days until retirement, when he'd have nothing left but time to sit in that empty house and remember everything he failed to do. His co-workers offered sympathetic smiles, but kept their distance. They knew about Kathy. They didn't know about the gun, or the debt, or the nights he sat in darkness, wondering why he was still breathing. This morning, he'd thought about the gun again. Just 2 more days of pretending, then he could stop, and then a puppy started chasing his car. And everything changed. Frank sat in his idling cruiser, staring through the windshield at the tiny German shepherd puppy. She couldn't have been more than 4 months old, undersized, her black and tan coat matted with ice and snow. Her small body trembled so violently that he could see it from 15 feet away. Just another stray, he muttered, reaching for the gear shift. Let animal control handle it in the morning, but the puppy didn't act like a normal stray. She didn't approach for warmth or food. Instead, she ran ahead about 20 feet. Stopped and looked back at him. Then she barked, sharp, urgent before running forward again. Frank froze. He'd seen this before, years ago. Farm dog leading him to a barn fire. That dog had saved 3 horses that night. He checked his watch. 4:35 p.m. His shift ended at 6. The weather report had warned all day of a historic blizzard rolling in within the next 90 minutes. Every sensible person in Millbrook was already home. This is stupid, he muttered. But his hand moved to the radio instead of the gear shift. Unit 7 to dispatch. Go ahead. 7, following up on possible emergency situation. We'll report back. Static crackled. Frank, your shift's almost over. Let the night crew handle it. It's on my way home. A lie. His house was on the opposite end of town. He put the cruiser in drive and followed the puppy. She led him off Highway 47. Onto an unmarked trail he'd forgotten existed. The snow fell heavier now, fat flakes sticking faster than his wipers could clear. Visibility dropped by the minute. He almost turned back 3 times, but each time the puppy stopped and looked back at him with those desperate brown eyes. The trail wound through pine trees heavy with snow. Branches creaked in the rising wind. Frank's headlights cut through the dark, illuminating the little dog struggling through drifts that reached her chest. She fell, got up, kept going. Where are you taking me? Frank whispered. After 15 minutes, the trees opened up to reveal an old 2-story farmhouse. Frank's stomach sank. He knew this place, the Brennan property. No relation to him. Abandoned 5 years ago. A dark history. Back in 1985, a family of 4 had died here during a blizzard. trapped inside, frozen to death. The front door hung open. The lock was broken. Frank killed his engine and grabbed his flashlight. He drew his weapon from habit. Police. Anyone inside? Only the wind answered, howling through broken windows. The puppy didn't wait. She bolted through the door and up the stairs, barking frantically. Frank followed, flashlight beam bouncing off peeling wallpaper. The air inside was colder than outside. His breath came out in pale clouds. Police! He called again, climbing the stairs. The wood groaned beneath his boots. The barking led him to a bedroom at the end of the hall. Frank pushed the door open and froze. A man lay on the floor, wrapped in a threadbare coat. Another German shepherd, an adult, was curled around him, trying to provide warmth. The larger dog raised her head and snarled, too weak to stand. Frank holstered his weapon and knelt. "Easy, girl. I'm here to help." The man's lips were blue, his breathing shallow and uneven. His right leg was twisted at an unnatural angle. The room told a story. Empty water bottles, granola wrappers, burnt-down candles, old newspapers, and an empty bag of dog food. Someone had been here for days. A folded note slipped from the man's pocket. Frank opened it, his flashlight trembling. "To whoever finds me, thank you for trying. I wanted this. Please don't feel guilty. Take care of my dog's CD changed my mind. Too cold, made mistake. Please help. Dogs need..." The sentence trailed off. Frank grabbed his radio. "Unit 7, need ambulance immediately." Abandoned Brennan House, mile marker 23. Male, approximately 60, severe hypothermia. Possible leg fracture. 2 dogs present, urgent. "I didn't save him," Frank muttered, staring at the dim hospital lights reflected in the chapel's stained glass window. The puppy did. It was 8 p.m. The chapel was quiet except for the low hum of the heating vents. Frank sat in the back pew, his police jacket folded beside him. The weight pressing down on his chest felt heavier than his badge ever had. $23,000. That's what it had cost to keep the stranger alive, and money he didn't have added to the $89,000 of medical debt from Kathy's cancer. His future was mathematically doomed. One $800 pension, lent $150. In monthly expenses, a mortgage he couldn't meet by spring. The numbers circled his mind like vultures. He would lose the house, Kathy's garden, her wind chimes, the craft room still filled with her half-finished projects, everything. His phone buzzed on the pew beside him. "Beth, Dad, did you forget?" Lily wanted to say goodnight. Frank's throat tightened. He wiped his face quickly and forced his voice to steady. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Got caught up at work." "It's your last week, Dad," Beth snapped. "Can't you just..." "Never mind." Then Lily's small voice came through the background static, warm and innocent. "Is Grandpa coming for Christmas?" "We'll see, honey. Grandpa's busy." The call ended. Just like that, Frank sat in silence for a full minute before walking back through the snow to his patrol car. The flakes fell heavier now, blanketing the hospital parking lot in white. He climbed into the driver's seat, turned off the engine, and opened the glove compartment. The gun was still there, cold, heavy, waiting. He sat with it in his lap, staring at his reflection in the rearview mirror. "I just made everything worse," he whispered. "I can't even afford to die." He'd looked up funeral costs after Kathy passed. $8,000 minimum. The irony nearly made him laugh. A scratching noise startled him. He looked up and froze. The puppy. She stood outside his window, fur clumped with snow, her leash trailing behind her like a ribbon of frost. Blood had seeped through the fresh bandages on her paws. Frank opened the door. The puppy limped forward and jumped straight into his lap, curling into a shivering ball. She didn't make a sound, just pressed against him, trembling. "This tiny thing," Frank whispered. "You ran through a blizzard for a stranger, and now you're here again?" He looked at the gun in his right hand, then at the puppy sleeping against his chest. Something inside him cracked open, something that had been frozen for years. "You lost your mother, didn't you?" he said softly. He didn't yet know that the adult dog was still alive, that he'd misunderstood the dying man's note. But somehow it felt true. "You're all alone, and you still didn't quit." For the first time in 3 years, Frank Brennan cried. Deep, shuddering sobs that emptied years of guilt and grief into the still night. The puppy stayed pressed against him, her tiny heartbeat syncing with his own. Finally, Frank put the gun back into the glove compartment and closed it. "I can't quit now," he said quietly. "You didn't quit. That man in there didn't quit. So I won't either." Back inside the hospital, Frank discovered his mistake. The adult dog was alive. The mother, Lady, the puppy keeper, had simply done what her instincts told her. Save the one who couldn't save himself. But for Frank, the shift had already happened. He'd chosen to live. By 10 that night, the hospital waiting room had turned into his new precinct. He spread papers across the table. The suicide note, the reports, the photos. The words on that note clawed at him. "To whoever finds me, thank you for trying. But I wanted this. Please don't feel guilty. Take care of my dogs and CD, 2 initials. No ID, no wallet, no phone. A ghost." Frank had already checked county databases and missing persons reports. Nothing. That's when Nurse Helen Rodriguez appeared with 2 steaming cups of coffee. "You're still here?" she asked. "Can't leave," Frank said, taking the cup gratefully. "Not until I know who he is." Helen sat beside him, following his gaze to the ICU window, where the unconscious man lay motionless. After a long pause, she pulled out her phone, scrolling through old clippings. "Wait, I think I know him." She turned the screen toward Frank. A newspaper photo from 15 years ago showed a smiling man in surgical scrubs beside a young patient. The headline read, "Local surgeon saves child after factory accident. Same eyes, same jawline," Helen said. "Dr. Charles Dawson, trauma surgeon. Worked here from 1985 to about 2 years ago. One of the best." Frank stared at the screen, then at the broken man behind the glass. Time and suffering had changed him beyond recognition, but it was him. What happened to him? Helen hesitated. "Let's check." 20 minutes later, they sat in a dim office, scrolling through personnel files. Charles Dawson, born 1959, employed 1985-2020. Dozens of awards and letters of gratitude from families he'd saved. Then one line in April 2021, "Resignation effective immediately." Helen opened a local newspaper archive. The first article hit Frank like a sledgehammer. April 2021. Local man dies of overdose. Michael Dawson, 28. Survived by Father Charles and Mother Jennifer. Michael Dawson. Frank froze. The name wasn't unfamiliar. He'd been one of Frank's police youth cadets 10 years ago. Bright, idealistic, always talking about wanting to help people. "Oh, God," Frank whispered. "I knew his son." Helen found another article. October 2021. Wife of former surgeon found dead in apparent suicide. Jennifer Dawson, 54. Then a third November 2021. Dr. Dawson donates entire estate to Children's Hospital. $2.3 million. Disappears from public record thereafter. Frank's heart sank. He lost everything, he said quietly. His son, his wife, his purpose. Helen nodded, eyes wet. "Michael used to volunteer here. Sweet kid. Everyone loved him." Frank remembered the funeral, the destroyed father, the numb silence. "I thought maybe Michael was struggling with something," he whispered. "Depression, maybe drugs. I saw the signs, did nothing. And now," his voice broke, "now I'm responsible for saving the father of the boy I failed to save." It felt cosmic, cruel, almost deliberate. At 6 a.m. the next morning, Christmas Eve, Charles Dawson regained consciousness. Frank hadn't left his bedside all night. The older man's eyes fluttered open. "Where?" "Millbrook Memorial," Frank said gently. "You're safe." He showed him a photo on his phone. Both dogs sleeping side by side. "They're okay. They made it." Tears filled Charlie's eyes. "Keeper found you? She really found you?" His voice cracked. "I sent a baby into a blizzard because I was too weak to save myself." Over the next hour, the story came out in fragments. The fall, the broken leg, the dead phone. "The 8 days of isolation. I sent Lady for help," Charlie whispered. "When she didn't come back, I thought we'd all die there." Frank smiled faintly. "Lady came back. She's alive." "She never stopped trying." Charlie blinked. "How do you know my name?" "The hospital identified you. And I remember you from Michael's funeral." The name hung heavy in the air. Charlie's tears returned, slow and endless. "You're a doctor," Frank said softly. "You saved 127 people and killed 2. Charlie interrupted bitterly. "My son, my wife. Michael's death wasn't your fault." "Don't," Charlie snapped. "I was in surgery. He needed me. I chose a stranger over my own son." "I knew Michael," Frank confessed. "I was his mentor in the police youth program." Charlie froze. "Your officer, Brennan. He idolized you, wanted to be like you. Maybe if he'd had you as a father instead of me." Frank's voice trembled. "I failed him too. I saw the pain. I ignored it." Silence stretched between them, thick with shared guilt. Then Frank said quietly, 3 weeks ago I put a gun to my head." Charlie looked up in shock. "My granddaughter video called me. That's the only reason I'm still here. And your puppy, she didn't let me quit. So I'm not letting you quit either." At 11 a.m., Frank's phone rang again. Beth, crying. "Dad, I need help. Mark's filing for full custody of Lily. Says I'm unfit because I lost my job. I need a lawyer. $15,000 retainer. Please, Dad." Frank's chest constricted. $15,000. He had $340 in the bank. "I don't have it," he said, voice breaking. "I'm in debt. $89,000 from your mother's treatments." "What?" Beth's voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me? What could you have done?" "I could have known," she shouted. "Is this why you won't come for Christmas? Because you're broke?" "You were never there, Dad. Not for Mom, not for me. Now, not for Lily." "Beth, please." The line went dead. Frank stood in the corridor, hollowed out. When he returned to Charlie's room, the older man read his face instantly. "Family. Daughter," Frank said. "She needs money." I don't have it. Charlie's expression twisted. And yet you took responsibility for me. How much? 23,000. Charlie stared. You don't even know me. No, Frank said softly. But Keeper did. And that was enough. Charlie's face contorted in anguish. Everyone who tries to save me gets destroyed. Don't you see? He tore at his IV lines. Stop. Frank lunged forward, but Charlie fought, his voice ragged. Everyone would be better off if I just... Helen burst in with a syringe. Within seconds, Charlie slumped back, sedated, the monitors steady again. Frank sank into the chair beside the bed, voice trembling. I'm not giving up on you, he whispered, even if you've given up on yourself. Outside, snow continued to fall, thick, silent, endless, blanketing Millbrook in white, and as word of what had happened spread through the small town, whispers began to ripple through its streets. Officer Brennan saved a man no one even knew was missing. Leave a like if you believe some lives cross paths for a reason, and tell us in the comments what you would have done if you were Frank. The story of Officer Frank Brennan had spread through Millbrook like wildfire, the man who had risked his life to save a homeless stranger, and taken on $23,000 in medical debt to do it. By sunrise, the town had divided. At Rosie's Diner, the one place where gossip brewed faster than the coffee, the debate burned hot. Pastor Jim Wilson stood by the window booth, his voice echoing above the clatter of dishes. This is what faith looks like in action, he declared. Frank Brennan did what any good man should do. That's Christianity in motion. Across the room, Bill Henderson, a contractor with a booming voice and a grudge against idealism, slammed down his mug. Christianity. He's bankrupting himself for a man who made his own bed. Frank's got a granddaughter. He should be thinking about her. The diner buzzed with divided loyalties. Mary Sullivan, the school teacher, looked up from her pie. He deserves compassion, she said quietly, and Frank deserves to keep his house. But Linda Chen, the town accountant, shook her head. I ran the numbers, she said flatly. At this rate, he'll lose everything within 6 months. The room went quiet for a moment. Then Pastor Wilson tapped his phone decisively. If money's the problem, we'll fix it. I'm setting up a GoFundMe right now. Let's see if Millbrook still remembers what gratitude means. Within hours, donations began trickling in. 200 here, 50 there. By 4:30 p.m., the total hit 2,400, not nearly enough, but it was something. At 5 o'clock, the bell above Rosie's door jingled, and conversation died mid-sentence. Frank Brennan stepped inside. Snow still clung to his jacket. His eyes were tired, unreadable. Every head turned. Bill Henderson rose from his seat. Frank, he said, you're a good man, but you're making a mistake. Frank gave a small nod. Noted. Pastor Wilson hurried over, phone in hand, his face bright with hope. Frank, listen, we've raised 2,400 already. It's a start. Frank stirred his coffee slowly. Donate it to the animal shelter, he said. Frank, don't be proud. It's not pride, Frank interrupted softly. It's my decision. I made it and I'll live with it. He left a few dollars on the counter and walked out. When he reached his patrol car, he noticed 3 envelopes tucked under his windshield wiper. The first read, you're choosing a bum over your own granddaughter. What kind of grandfather are you? The second, thank you for showing my son what kindness looks like. Casey's mom. The third held a $100 bill and a note that read, my father died alone on the streets. Thank you for not letting that happen again. Frank sat behind the wheel, staring at the note spread across his lap. Hero. Fool. Savior. Sinner. He wasn't sure which one he was anymore. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Would you have done the same? That evening around 7 p.m., the hospital lobby glowed with sterile light. Nurses moved quietly through the hallways, their faces weary but kind. Frank was halfway to the coffee machine when a voice called out softly, Officer Brennan? Turned, a man approached. Thin, pale, his cheeks sunken, eyes dull but familiar. Yes, I'm Mark Morrison, the man said. Beth's husband. Frank stiffened immediately. What are you doing here? Mark lowered his eyes. I came to talk about Beth and Lily. Beth said you were filing for custody. That's not exactly true, Mark said quietly. He hesitated, then took a shaky breath. I'm dying, Officer Brennan. The words hit like a hammer. Frank blinked. What? Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. 3 to 6 months? The world tilted slightly. Frank gripped a chair to steady himself. Mark's voice was barely a whisper. I didn't leave Beth for another woman. I left because I didn't want her to watch me die. I didn't want Lily's last memory of her father to be that. Frank led him to a quiet corner of the cafeteria. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, Mark looked worse. His skin jaundiced, his frame skeletal. Frank's voice was cold but steady. That's the most cowardly thing I've ever heard. I know. Mark's eyes glistened. But my father died of cancer when I was Lily's age. I watched my mother fall apart. I couldn't do that to them. So you'd rather let your daughter think you abandoned her? I'm trying to protect her. Mark's voice cracked. She's 4. She knows I'm dying. She'll live every day terrified. If I disappear, she'll forget. Frank leaned forward, his jaw tight. That's not how children work. She won't forget. She'll just spend her life wondering what she did wrong. Mark buried his face in his hands. I don't know what to do. Everything I try makes it worse. The custody battle? Frank pressed. What's the truth? There isn't one. Mark said quietly. I talked to a lawyer about setting up a trust fund, life insurance. Arrangements for Lily's future. Beth overheard part of it and thought I was trying to take her away. Frank sighed. You need to tell her the truth. I can't. Mark whispered. If she knows I'm dying, she'll come back out of pity. She'll waste her last months trying to save me. Just like, he stopped, eyes meeting Frank's. Just like you're doing with that man upstairs. The words landed like a punch to the chest. Frank stared at him for a long moment. Then he said quietly, maybe we're both just scared of letting people see us fail. Mark nodded weakly. Yeah, maybe that's it. Silence stretched between them. Two men bound by guilt and grief. Finally, Frank spoke. My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. I blamed myself for not catching it sooner. Spent years pushing everyone away. Even my daughter. Even Lily. He looked down, voice low. 3 weeks ago, I almost ended it. The only reason I'm still here is because Lily video called me at exactly the right moment. Maybe the wrong one, depending on how you see it. Mark's eyes widened. You want to know what I learned? Frank continued. Running from pain doesn't protect anyone. It just makes everyone hurt alone. Watching someone die is brutal, but being left behind without answers, that's worse. Mark wiped his eyes. I'm so scared. Frank nodded. I know. So am I. At 7:30, a veterinary technician approached. Officer Brennan? We need to talk about the dogs. Frank's heart clenched. What's wrong? Lady, the adult female, has internal injuries, a liver laceration. It's been bleeding for days. Surgery has a 20% success rate at best, and if we don't operate, we can keep her comfortable for a few days, or we can end her suffering now. Frank felt his throat tighten. How much pain? A lot, the tech said softly. She's hiding it well, but it's bad. Frank found Charlie awake, sitting beside Keeper's kennel. Together, they went to the veterinary ward, where Dr. Marcus Rodriguez explained the situation in careful detail. Charlie leaned forward, tears streaming. Not her, too. Please, not her, too. Lady licked his trembling hand weakly. You saved me, Charlie whispered. You sent Keeper to save me. I can't lose you. Frank placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. She's suffering, Charlie. I know, Charlie said, his voice breaking. Everyone I love leaves me. My son, my wife. And now... He stopped, realizing. I'm being selfish again. He turned to the vet. If she survives the surgery, what kind of life will she have? Pain, limping, lifelong care, Rodriguez admitted. Without it, she has 3 to 5 days, maybe less. Charlie closed his eyes. Then give me tonight, just one more night. That night, Christmas Eve, Lady was moved into Charlie's room. She lay on a blanket beside his bed, Keeper curled against her. Frank sat nearby in silence. They talked about Michael, about Jennifer, about the mistakes that turned into ghosts. The night stretched long. By dawn, Lady's breathing grew shallow. Dr. Rodriguez arrived at 6:30. It's time, he said gently. Charlie nodded, unable to speak. Beth and Lily arrived just then, Beth's eyes red. Lily holding a crayon drawing of a dog with wings. For Lady, she said softly, setting it beside her. Charlie whispered his final words, voice trembling. Thank you for staying with me, for giving me Keeper. For showing me there's still something worth fighting for. Lady licked his hand one last time, then went still. Keeper barked once, then howled. The sound tore through the sterile hall, raw, ancient, and heartbreakingly human. Even Frank wept. Lily tugged her mother's sleeve, then walked to Charlie. It's okay, she said softly. The doggie's with Michael now. Charlie froze. What did you say? Michael's the boy in heaven. Grandpa told me. He loves dogs. He'll take care of her. Charlie's face crumpled. He never had a dog, he whispered. I always told him someday. Lily smiled faintly. He has one now, and in that moment, Frank Brennan, a man who thought he'd seen it all and believed, just for a heartbeat, that maybe Grace still existed. Then she hugged Charlie, this broken stranger, with the unconscious compassion only a child possesses. Charlie held the little girl with one arm, Keeper with the other, and wept harder than he had since Jennifer's death. Frank watched from a few steps away, his chest tight. His granddaughter's tiny arms were doing something years of grief had not, softening the edges of a man's pain. And something inside Frank shifted too. Maybe healing didn't come from pushing pain away. Maybe it came from letting others help carry it. That afternoon, they buried Lady in a small pet cemetery at the edge of town. Dr. Rodriguez had arranged everything, refusing any payment. Dr. Dawson saved my daughter 15 years ago, he said quietly. This is nothing. The ceremony was simple but full of meaning. Frank Charlie, in his wheelchair. Beth and little Lily, Mark Morrison, pale but determined, and a handful of hospital staff who had heard the story and couldn't stay away. Pastor Jim Wilson stood by the grave, his voice steady. Loyalty, sacrifice, love that endures beyond breath. That's what this animal showed us. And maybe that's what we're meant to learn from her. Charlie spoke last, his voice barely more than a whisper. Lady, you were broken when I found you. So was I. We saved each other. You gave me 3 years of companionship when I had nothing and no one. You gave me Keeper. You gave me a reason to wake up every morning." He paused, his voice trembling. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you. I'm sorry I couldn't save anyone who mattered. But I promise you this. I won't waste what you gave me. I'll take care of Keeper. I'll keep going. For you." Keeper pressed tightly against Charlie's wheelchair, staring at the small mound of earth. She hadn't eaten in 3 days. The vet was growing concerned, but no one could bring themselves to take her away. That evening, back at the hospital, Charlie refused to return to his room. "I can't be alone, right?" Now he admitted softly. So Frank wheeled him down to the cafeteria, mostly empty on Christmas. Night they sat at a corner table under flickering lights. With bad coffee and vending machine sandwiches neither touched, Keeper lay under the table, motionless. After a long silence, Charlie spoke. "Tell me about your wife." Frank looked up, caught off guard. "Why?" "Because you understand loss," Charlie said quietly. "And I need to understand how you're still here." Frank leaned back, sighing deeply. Then, for the first time in years, he told the story out loud. He spoke about Kathy's stomach pains, the ones he'd brushed off as stress. About the late-stage diagnosis, the 8 brutal months of chemotherapy that had stolen her hair, her strength, and finally, her smile. And then her final words, "Promise me you'll find something to live for again." Frank's voice wavered. "I promised her, and then I broke that promise for 3 years. Pushed my daughter away. Barely knew my granddaughter. 3 weeks ago, I put a gun to my head." Charlie stared at him, silent. "What stopped you?" "Lily?" Frank said, a small broken smile forming. "She video called me, wanted to show me a drawing of a Christmas tree. It was awful as just scribbles, but she was so proud of it. And I realized if I pulled that trigger, I'd never see another drawing. Never hear her laugh again. Never get the chance to be the grandfather I should have been." Charlie sat quietly for a long time, absorbing the confession. Finally, he said, "Michael texted me that night. 'Dad, I need you.' It was 2 a.m. I was in surgery, saving someone else's son. I didn't see it until 6. He was gone by 4. His voice cracked. "If I'd just looked at my phone, stepped out of surgery for 1 minute." Frank cut him off sharply. "You'd have what? Abandoned a patient on the table? Let another parent bury their child instead." "He was my son," Charlie whispered. "And that 23-year-old was someone else's," Frank said firmly. His voice rose, rough with emotion. "You don't get to choose who lives and who dies based on DNA. You're a doctor. You save lives. That's who you are." "I'm a father first," Charlie snapped. "You can't be a father if you're not yourself." Frank stood, leaning on the table. His words came like thunder. "You think Michael wanted you to die in that frozen house? You think he'd want you to punish yourself for the rest of your life?" Charlie's face twisted with grief. "He told Jennifer he hated me 2 days before he died. She called me that night, told me our son needed me. I didn't answer because I was in surgery. I said I'd call him after my shift. But there was no after. The cafeteria had gone silent. Even the vending machines seemed to pause." Frank sat back down, voice lower but firmer. "So what? One tragedy erases a lifetime of miracles? You think those 127 people you saved don't matter?" He pulled out his phone, swiping until he found an article. A headline about a young woman in medical school. "You saved this girl, Emma Rodriguez. She's going to save hundreds more because of you." Charlie's eyes widened as he stared at the photo. His voice was barely audible. "Emma Rodriguez. The factory accident. Christmas Eve 2009. I operated for 8 hours." Frank leaned forward. "She lived. She's alive because of you. Her father said you gave him his family back." Charlie looked at the photo again, tears blurring his vision. "I saved her," he whispered. "I actually saved her." Frank's hand rested on his shoulder. 127 lives, Charlie. How many of them were under 28? Maybe 70. Charlie murmured. Mostly children. Then 70 parents didn't have to bury their kids. 70 futures you protected. Michael's death doesn't erase that. For a long time, Charlie said nothing. Then, slowly, he nodded. "I want to practice medicine again." Dr. Chen, who had been checking his chart nearby, looked up sharply. "Dr. Dawson, you'd have to be recertified." "I know," Charlie interrupted. "But I can volunteer. Free clinics, anywhere that needs a surgeon. I can still help." He looked at Frank with steady determination. Michael wanted to help people. Maybe the best way to honor him is to keep doing what I was meant to do, not stop because I failed once. Frank's voice softened. "You didn't fail, Charlie. You're human. You made choices none of us could have made perfectly." Charlie nodded. His voice gained strength. "Then I'll live with that, but I'll keep going. Lady died saving me. Michael died while I was saving someone else. Their deaths have to mean something. Under the table, Keeper stirred for the first time in days. She pressed her muzzle against Charlie's leg, a quiet sign of life. And for the first time in a long time, Charlie smiled. The next morning, December 26th, hospital administrator Margaret Walsh found Frank in the cafeteria, nursing his fourth cup of coffee. She handed him an envelope, her expression unreadable. "Officer Brennan, this is your copy of Dr. Dawson's final bill." Frank's hands trembled. "Didn't want to look. I know what it says," he muttered. "Actually," Margaret said softly, "you don't." He opened it. $23,472, paid in full. Frank blinked in disbelief. "What, how?" "Anonymous donor," she explained. "Walked into billing at 11 p.m. with a cashier's check. Left this note for you." Frank opened the second envelope. Inside was a letter written on fine stationery. "Dr. Charles Dawson saved my daughter's life 15 years ago. Emma was 8. A metal beam crushed her skull in an industrial accident. He operated for 8 hours on Christmas Eve. Today, she's 23 in medical school. This isn't charity, it's a debt repaid. Tell him Emma says thank you." Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, DVM. Frank read it 3 times before it sank in. The vet who had treated Keeper and Lady had paid Charlie's entire hospital bill. He ran to Charlie's room, burst through the door. "Charlie, your bill. It's paid. All of it." Charlie turned slowly from the window. "What?" Frank handed him the note, breathless. "Dr. Rodriguez, he paid everything. He said you saved his daughter 15 years ago." Charlie read it once, then again. His hands trembled. "Emma Rodriguez," he whispered. "I remember her. Christmas Eve, 2009. She was coding when they brought her in. I operated for 8 hours." Tears rolled down his face. "Michael was 13 that Christmas. He told me he hated me because I missed Christmas morning. I thought they were right, but Emma lived. She lived." Frank smiled through tears. "You didn't just save her, Charlie. You saved her future, and everyone she'll ever save." Charlie clutched the letter to his chest, sobbing quietly. For the first time, his tears weren't for what he'd lost, but for what he'd given. "Mark, if you're here to judge, I'm here to thank you," Charlie said softly. Mark moved slowly into the room, Beth supporting his arm. His skin was pale, his eyes tired but steady. "You saved a stranger," Mark said quietly, "at great cost to yourself. You showed Beth what real selflessness looks like, and you made me realize what a coward I've been." He turned toward Charlie, the truth heavy in his voice. "I'm Mark Morrison. I'm dying of pancreatic cancer. I left my family because I thought I was protecting them from watching me die." Charlie studied him, the doctor in him seeing all the telltale signs. "Stage 4. 3 months, maybe less." Then after a long silence, he said softly, 2 months now, probably." Mark nodded. His voice didn't shake. "I came to ask you something, Dr. Dawson. Can you save me?" Charlie's response was immediate, honest. "No, no one can. Not at this stage." Mark gave a faint smile. "That's what I thought, but I had to ask." He sat down heavily, breath shallow. "My daughter is 4 years old. She won't remember me." Charlie's throat tightened. "Michael was 28 when he died," he said quietly, "and I thought that was enough time together. It wasn't. There's never enough time." Mark looked down, voice cracking. "I left my wife and daughter because I didn't want them to see me deteriorate. I didn't want Lily's last memory of me to be sick and weak." Charlie stared at him for a moment. Then his voice hardened. "That was stupid." Mark blinked in surprise. "What?" "I said that was stupid," Charlie repeated, his tone firm, controlled, the words burning with truth. "You think your daughter won't remember you leaving? You think that won't scar her? I was a terrible father, absent, distracted, always at the hospital. But Michael had memories, good ones and bad ones, all the memories. Your daughter will have nothing, just questions, just abandonment." Mark's eyes filled with tears. "I don't want her to see me like this." Charlie leaned forward in his bed, eyes fierce. "Then you're a coward, and you're making the same mistake I did." His voice broke slightly. "I wasn't there enough for Michael. I missed birthdays, holidays, school plays. I was always saving someone else's child instead of being with my own. And when he needed me most, I was in surgery. He died while I was saving someone else." Mark's tears finally fell. "But you know what I'd give anything for?" Charlie whispered hoarsely. "One more day, 1 more hour, 1 more minute with him. Even if he hated me, even if he was angry, just to be there." He pointed at Mark. "You have 2 months, maybe less. Don't waste them hiding. Don't make your daughter spend the rest of her life wondering why you left." Mark's voice trembled. "But I'm scared." "So am I," Charlie said softly, "every damn day. But I'm still here." He looked toward Keeper, then at Frank, then back at Mark. "If I can choose to keep living after losing everything, you can choose to die surrounded by love instead of alone." Beth moved closer, gently taking Mark's hand. "Come home," she said quietly. "We'll face this together, all of us." Mark looked at her, then at Frank, then at Charlie. "I don't deserve—" "None of us do," Frank interrupted. "But here's what I've learned this week. Grace isn't about deserving. It's about choosing to give it anyway." Mark broke down completely, his shoulders shaking. Beth held him close, whispering softly. Frank looked away, giving them privacy, and found Charlie watching him. "You're a good man, Frank Brennan," Charlie said. "I'm trying to be." Charlie gave a faint smile. "Me too, for the first time in 2 years. I'm actually trying." Keeper stood then, walking over to Charlie's bedside. She placed her paw gently on his hand, the first time she'd initiated contact since Lady's death. Charlie picked her up, holding her close. "We're going to be okay," he whispered to the puppy. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday. 6 weeks later, life had taken on a strange, healing rhythm. Charlie had moved into Frank's house, taking over Kathy's old craft room, the one Frank had finally found the courage to clean out. The transition felt natural, like two broken men slowly learning to live again under one roof. Charlie's leg healed well. He went through physical therapy 3 times a week, learning to walk with a cane, then eventually without one. He began volunteering at the free clinic on Tuesdays and Thursdays, treating patients who couldn't afford care. His hands remembered the work, even if his heart was still learning to bear the weight of it. Frank retired from the police force and took a part-time job at the animal shelter, helping people in a different way, he said. The community's GoFundMe had raised $8,200, enough to pay down his debts and save the house from foreclosure. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to breathe. Beth moved into an apartment just 10 minutes away. She'd been accepted into a school counseling program at the University of Wyoming. "I want to help kids like Michael," she told them, "kids who are struggling before it's too late." Lily thrived in preschool, visiting Frank and Charlie almost every day. She called Charlie Uncle Charlie without anyone suggesting it. The first time she did, he cried. Mark had moved back home under hospice care. His health declined rapidly. The cancer was merciless, but he was there. Every morning he woke beside his daughter. Every evening he told her he loved her. He was present in a way he never had been before, as though dying had finally taught him how to live. Then, one night, February 10th, 3 a.m., Beth called. "It's time," she whispered. "Mark is asking for you." Frank woke Charlie. "Beth needs us." Charlie didn't hesitate. They'd become family, the kind that showed up at 3 a.m. without question. They drove through silent streets. Keeper curled in the back seat. At Beth's apartment, Mark lay in a hospital bed in the living room, barely conscious. Beth sat on one side, holding his hand. Lily slept on the other, tiny fingers wrapped around her father's thumb. Mark's breathing was shallow, his voice a whisper. "Frank, thank you for showing me what it means to not give up. You showed yourself," Frank said softly. Mark's eyes found Charlie. "Thank you for saving me, not my body, but my soul." Charlie leaned closer. "You saved yourself. I just pointed the way." Mark smiled faintly. "Lily won't remember much, but she'll remember I was here. That's enough." At 4:17 that morning, Mark Morrison passed away, peacefully, surrounded by love. The very way he'd been terrified to die turned out to be the only way he truly needed to die. Lily woke moments later, blinking sleepily at the stillness. "Is Daddy sleeping?" she asked. Beth pulled her close, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, honey. Daddy's sleeping." Later, when the house was quiet, after the funeral plans were made and Lily was finally asleep, Charlie and Frank sat outside on the small balcony. The air was cold, but neither moved. "I wasn't there when Michael died," Charlie murmured. "But I was there when Mark did. It doesn't fix anything, but it helped. Somehow it helped. Mark told me once we were both idiots," Frank said, half smiling. "We thought we were protecting people by pushing them away." Charlie nodded. He was right. Keeper pressed between them, her head resting across both men's legs. Frank had officially given her to Charlie, though everyone knew she belonged to them both. She moved between them instinctively, knowing who needed her most on any given day. "You keeping the dog?" Frank asked, though he already knew the answer. "Is that even a question?" Charlie smiled softly, scratching behind Keeper's ear. "Lady gave her to me. I'm not letting her go. She's mine, and I'm hers." Frank chuckled quietly. "Good, because that house would be too quiet without her." Leave a like and share your thoughts below. The greatest stories aren't about survival. They're about the courage to keep living after the storm is past. Charlie's voice trembled, but it carried strength now, earned through pain, redemption, and love. "I'm standing here because 2 beings, 1 human, 1 canine, decided I was worth saving when I didn't think I was. If you want to honor anyone, honor them. Honor the people who don't give up on others, even when they've given up on themselves." The vote was unanimous. Lady's Run became official that day. A memorial plaque was placed at the site of the old house, in memory of Lady, a German shepherd who gave her life to save another, and in honor of Keeper, who finished what her mother started. December 2023. A year later, May 20th, Lily's 5th birthday filled Frank's backyard with laughter, balloons, and chaos. Keeper sat proudly in a party hat, letting 15 children climb over her with the patience only a shepherd could have. When Lily blew out her candles, she whispered, "I wish Daddy was here." Beth's eyes glistened. "Me too, sweetheart. But Grandpa says Daddy's always here," Lily said, pressing a tiny hand to her heart, then pointed pointing skyward. He's with Michael and Lady. They're playing in heaven. Later, after the guests had gone, Beth found Frank in the kitchen. Dad, I have news. You're pregnant? Frank teased. God, no, better. She laughed through tears. I got accepted. Full ride to the counseling program. They said my essay about loss and resilience was the best they'd ever received. Frank pulled her into a long embrace. Your mother would be so proud. Beth nodded. I'm doing it for her. For Michael, for Mark. I want to help kids before they're too lost to find their way back. Charlie, who had overheard, smiled softly. That's the most important work there is. Thank you, Uncle Charlie. Beth said, for everything you've done for my dad, for all of us. He shook his head. He saved my life. You saved his too. You just don't realize it yet. December 23rd, 1 year later, Frank, Charlie, Beth, Lily, and Keeper made a quiet pilgrimage along Ladies Run. The trail, now maintained and marked, stretched 1.3 miles through the pine forest. The air was cold, but the sun glowed gold against the snow. At the old abandoned house, a new plaque hung on the door. Here. Two souls found each other. December 23rd, 2023. Charlie knelt and laid a bouquet of yellow roses, Lady's favorite color according to his heart. He placed a photo beside them. Lily added her own gift, a crayon drawing of a dog with wings. For Lady, she said seriously. Charlie picked her up, tears shining in his eyes. Why are you crying, Uncle Charlie? Because I'm happy, sweetheart. Frank stood a few feet away, silent in thought. Charlie joined him. What are you thinking about? Frank took a breath. A year ago, I almost ended my life. Right here, about 100 feet from where you were dying, if Keeper hadn't found me. But she did, Charlie finished softly. Yeah, Frank said. We saved each other. Just then, Keeper darted into the woods. Frank called after her, worried. Moments later, she returned, tail wagging, a muddy tennis ball in her mouth. She dropped it at Charlie's feet. He stared, realizing, Lady must have hidden this last year. Keeper had found her mother's toy, one final gift. Charlie tucked it gently into his coat pocket. Lady's ball, he whispered. Keeper wagged proudly. Her mission complete. They walked back together, 5 souls and 1 dog, bathed in the golden light of a winter sunset. Lily rode on Frank's shoulders, babbling stories about school. Beth talked about her graduate plans. Charlie and Keeper walked side by side, the man and the dog who had saved each other. As they neared the truck, Charlie asked, Frank, can I ask something? Why did you save me? Frank was quiet for a long time. 3 weeks before I found you, I almost ended my own life. Kathy made me promise to find something to live for. I broke that promise for 3 years, until Keeper. He smiled faintly. She's a good dog. The best thing that ever happened to me, Frank said, then paused. Second best. The first was following her that day. They climbed into the truck as the sun slipped below the trees. Beth and Lily followed in their car. Dinner waited at Frank's house. A new tradition, Sunday dinners together. As the truck rolled down the highway, Frank glanced at Charlie. You know what people ask me? If I believe in miracles, Charlie smiled. And what do you tell them? Frank's eyes softened. I tell them yes, because I've seen one. Her name was Lady, and her daughter's name is Keeper. They saved more than one life that Christmas. The truck disappeared down the snowy road, tail lights fading into dusk. Above them, stars blinked to life. Steady, eternal, somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once, joyful, alive, announcing to the world that she was here, that she had survived, that she had found her purpose. When we lose someone we love, it's easy to believe happiness is no longer ours to claim. But healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means honoring those we've lost by living fully, by opening our hearts again, by allowing others to carry a piece of our grief. Lady and Keeper didn't just save lives, they restored hope. They reminded us all that love, in its purest form, never dies. It just finds new ways to guide us home. Now I ask you, have you ever experienced an unexpected moment that changed how you saw life? What helped you find hope again during your darkest time? Share your story below, because sometimes your words could be the light someone else is searching for.